Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan Virtual Lunch and Learn. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join the Space Coast TPO to learn more about this project and to help us build your trail network. Next slide. I'm Sarah Crom. I'm the Space Coast TPO Senior Transportation Planner, as well as the project manager for the Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Aditya Inamdar. I'm an associate urban planner designer with Kittleson & Associates. I'm serving as the consultant team's project manager and will be tag teaming with Sarah through the presentation.
For some GoToWebinar housekeeping, if you have not participated in a GoToWebinar before, attendees are in listen-only mode. However, you do have some controls in order to engage with us throughout the meeting. Your audio is controlled in this panel, so all attendees will be on mute, but if you do need to change from computer to phone call audio, you have those options here if you're having trouble with audio. You can also put any questions in the chat at any time. We will go through and answer the questions as we can via the chat, but then also at the end, we'll read the questions aloud and answer them time willing. There are also two handouts on your GoToWebinar. We have a fact sheet as well as also the presentation that we'll be showing. And before we get started on our presentation, I would like to note that the Space Coast TPO complies with various non-discrimination laws and regulations, including Title VI. So we are seeking public participation without regard to race, color, national origin, age, sex, religion, disability, or family status. If you need any help accessing or engaging during the public participation process, please reach out to our Title VI coordinator, Abby Hemingway, either via phone 321-690-6890 or abby.hemingway@sctpo.com. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aditya to walk us through our presentation today.
Well, thank you, Sarah. If we go to the next slide. So here's the agenda for today. We just went through introductions. We'll share a little bit more about the project background and goals, the process and schedule that we're following for the planning study. We've done a lot of existing conditions analysis, so we'll share some findings. And then we'll go into kind of the trail system, talk about the typology, hierarchy, the work, and then wrap it up with next steps and question and discussion. Go to the next one. So the goals really to share information about the project and to allow public participation throughout the planning process. We want to review the draft future trail improvements in your area and get feedback on those. We want to hear your terms and comments regarding the potential improvements that we are recommending as part of the trail network, and really to kind of share more information to help you learn more about the trail connections, trail types, and about the project itself. So go to the next slide. So throughout the presentation, we have some interactive questions so that it's not just me talking, but you have some chance to provide feedback throughout the presentation today. The first question is on the slide here. The way to respond to this is you can either use the QR code on the upper left corner, or you can go to menti.com website and use the code 49349457. And once you log in with that code or to the QR code, you would see this question and you'll be able to respond. So the first question we're asking is, how often do you use trails or travel by walking or bicycling? So you can pick one of these options, rarely or never, a couple of times per month, 1 to 3 times per week, or almost every day. I can see some responses are coming in, a couple of times per month, and 1 to 3 times per week. That's good. So we're having folks on the call who are using trails or are walking and biking at least a few times. We'll keep this open for maybe a half a minute before we close out. But please respond, or if you're having any trouble, maybe put a question or comment in the chat, and maybe somebody can kind of help you if you're having trouble accessing the questions. All right, we're saying 1 to 3 times per week as like 5 responses. That's great. And one goal of this project is by creating a connected trail network, we hope that more and more folks are able to use trails, not just for recreation, but even for their everyday transportation needs, or just kind of creating a network of sidewalks and trails and shared use paths so that people are walking and biking. All right, well, maybe we'll give another 5-6 seconds before we close out, but
And
great
the
to see.
Menti code is in the chat if you are having trouble seeing it on the screen or would rather access it via the chat.
All right, I see that we have in the responses. I'm not sure if folks are having trouble accessing. I know this is the first question, so maybe we open it up for a little bit more time then. Again, you can use the QR code top left, or use the code 49349457 at menti.com. All right, I'm not seeing any more responses coming in. So maybe we'll go to the next one. And again, it's the same code, same website. The question should have been updated on your end. This is our second question. What is your favorite way to explore trails? I know in the southern Brevard area, we already have a few trails, like the Boundary Canal Trail, the Owl Tuttle Paved Trail. There are a few more trails in the Eel system as part of the conservation areas. There's some trails along St. John River corridor. Respond to this question, whether you like to walk or run along the trails. Do you like to bike, human powered or E? Some people may like to roller skate on paved trails or shared use paths along the roads. I know a lot of new devices have come on the market, and hoverboards. Some folks might be doing horseback riding. We have a lot of unpaved trail networks where folks like to ride horses. And then we have a few water trails in the study area, like the Turkey Creek. And of course, in Florida, there's a culture of boating, kayaking, canoeing. So that's another way to explore trails. We don't generally think of those waterways as trails, but it's kind of part of a blueway system. So we do think of them as like water trails. Great. So most of the folks here responding are either walking or running in trails, which is not surprising. That's kind of the most common way people enjoy trails. Some folks are kayaking, canoeing. That's great as well. And then biking, right? So walking, running, biking, and kayaking. Couple of votes for roller skating and horseback riding. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that feedback. We'll have some more questions through the presentation, so keep an eye out for those. So then I'll just like to kind of pivot to talk a little bit about the project background and goals. Just as a reminder, as you can see at the bottom right, by master plan, that was a county-wide master plan done by Space Coast TPO a few years back. And this is really kind of an extension of that, where we're thinking of this as a sub-area plan that's part of this overall ped bike network in the county. So the goals overall are consistent with that county-wide master plan. To create a connected, safe, and comfortable trail network in the area. We want to partner with organizations, both to educate, enforce, and engineer safe use of facilities. There are a lot of agencies involved in developing transportation facilities, so partnerships with organizations is critical. We want to empower people of all ages and abilities to walk or ride bicycle regularly, and that's really creating a safe network where people feel comfortable and empowered to walk and bike. Fourth is generate awareness. A lot of people don't know about the great trail network that's already existing or is being planned, some of the new projects that may be coming up. So we want to generate awareness, not just about the network, but also about safe practices, the public health benefits. And then finally, we want to pursue equity, right? Pursue equitable distribution of projects, programs, and funding throughout the area. Go to the next one. So this is the study area for this particular Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan project. We're looking primarily at the southern part of the county, which includes the city of Palm Bay, Bar, Grant Wilk area, and a certain unincorporated county areas to the of course, to the west along the Three Fork conservation areas and St. John River South and upper corridor. Go to the next one. Not seeing them. All right. So next, we want to talk through the process and schedule that we are following for this project. Go to the next slide. We've started this project, I think, a year and a half back. I guess there's some lag, and it's been kind of going on through different phases. But before I get into the specific project schedule, just wanted to kind of take a step back and present this kind of inverted pyramid that talks about the project development and planning process in general, right? So this is not just particular to this project, but for all transportation projects, they generally kind of filter from the top to the bottom, from like long-range transportation planning efforts. So that's where we are now. This is a master plan, kind of a long-range plan providing a vision for next few years, decades. Next, whatever projects are identified in the master plan would be prioritized and advanced to operational analysis or plan. That's kind of what we think of as feasibility studies. And you can see a timeline that kind of gives you a ballpark of number of years that each of these next steps takes, right? So it's kind of 1 to 2 years for feasibility studies. Then we go into PD&E couple of years. Then we go to design, where we're doing kind of survey, engineering design to different phases. That might take another couple of years. Then we might need to acquire right-of-way for construction. That could take 1 to 3 years. And then finally it gets into construction. So even if we're talking about a simple project like a trail along right-of-way that may be publicly owned already, it still takes about 5 to 10 years to go through this whole process. And that's depending on funding as well, right? So some projects are more complicated, where there might be environmental impacts or right-of-way is not available, and which may take longer. But that's kind of something to keep in mind, is like we are at the start of this long-range planning process for the trail network, and several projects will have to be advanced through these different phases. Next slide. So this slide talks about the project schedule for this particular master plan, the Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan. As I said, we started in fall of 2023, started with existing conditions, data analysis, mapping. We developed a hierarchy and typology system, and then we've been working through developing a draft recommended trail network and kind of developing a prioritization system to prioritize advance through those different phases of the pyramid on previous slide. We've also set up a working group that includes staff from agencies, local jurisdictions like Palm Bay, Malabar, Grand Wilk area, EEL, FDOT. So we have a lot of partner agencies that are involved in this project. We also have some members from the committees that Space Coast TPO has established. So it's more of a working group with technical staff and members from the committees that have guided the plan so far. But we are at a phase where we are now getting public feedback. So we had an in-person public open house last week. And today we're having this virtual lunch and learn. And so we're gonna open it up to public feedback after this. And then based on the feedback we receive, we're gonna revise the network and prioritization and document it in a master plan document by summer of 2025. And the goal is to have final presentations to various city, town councils, TPO committees, and TPO board by fall or later this year. Next slide. So as I said, we had formed a working group to help with development of this plan. We've had 2 working group meetings. These were in-person kind of workshops. First one was on February 22nd, 2024. It talked about existing conditions and goals and vision. Second working group was held in July, on July 17th, which kind of presented a very initial draft network of trails to get feedback on that. And then beyond those, we had various kind of one-on-one stakeholder meetings with agencies that have ownership or easement over right-of-ways, right? So we're talking about EEL program, that's environmentally endangered lands in the county, a lot of conservation areas with trail system within them, FPL, St. John River Water Management District, We're also looking at regional connections to Indian River County, so kind of engaging with the MPO, and then various local jurisdictions. And these were really meant to kind of get their feedback on the trails that we were showing on their properties or their right-of-ways, so that we get input early on in the process. And as I said, we had a public open house February 25th. This image is from that open house. We had a lot of great participation. Folks were involved looking at different maps and providing feedback. So really appreciate the feedback that we've received already. And again, we're hoping to get more feedback through today and next couple of weeks. Next slide. So what are the key takeaways that we've heard so far from the working group? Again, we heard that connected trail network. There are a lot of trails in the study area, but they're kind of disconnected from one another. So we want to create a connected network. Second, there was kind of an understanding that we want to have trails along non-roadway right-of-way. So think about canals, utility corridors, so kind of the transmission line corridors. However, there are complications with those because those are owned by different agencies. They may have their own policies regarding construction maintenance. So there are a lot of details that need to be worked out, although technically it might be feasible. And there are a couple of examples within the study area of trails along the canal or utility transmission line, but there might be need for additional coordination. Also, there's a lot of development happening in the area. So as we get new development, there is a way to work with developers to expand trail ped bike system as part of their development plans. Members also express a desire for safety and safe crossings across major roadways as part of trail network. And then thinking through the wide range of user groups, right? As I said, we have people who want to walk, bike, ride horses. There are a range of electric mobility devices, golf carts. So thinking through how we can mix and where we need to separate modes as part of the trail system. And finally, understanding how these trails can be maintained, and thinking about responsibility and different happen. Again, interagency cooperation is going to be key. So that's kind of the key takeaways that we heard so far. So go to the next one. All right, so now I want to kind of quickly walk through existing conditions. Next. So we started with kind of the land use mapping of the area. A lot of the area is kind of single family residential, especially in Palm Bay. There are pockets of mix of uses like institutional and commercial, retail establishments, especially along kind of major roadways. And then there's a conservation area on the west side, as well as kind of interspersed throughout the study area in Grand Volcano and Malabar. So again, there's a kind of an interesting mix of urban, suburban development, and then conservation areas. Go to keep going to the next one. And then we also mapped major destinations like shopping centers, community centers, trailheads, parks, libraries, schools, because these are kind of your origin destinations for a lot of ped bike trips. So we want to make sure that when we develop a connected network, we're able to provide access to people to these destinations. Go to the next one. And as I said, one of the goals was to explore, can we expand the trail network beyond the roadway network? Element of that was mapping some of the existing canal system in the area, both St. John Water Management District as well as Melbourne-Tillman District, utility right-of-ways, railroads. So these are kind of typical corridors where we see trails that are not along roads. So we want to explore that. The next slide. And then we looked at demographics because, again, we want to understand where people are. So where's population, employment. Again, no surprise, there's a lot of concentration in city of Palm Bay along major corridors. Next slide. Transportation disadvantaged communities. So again, these were data sets that were identified in previous projects, but we wanted to identify groups of people who may have to rely on walking or biking more than other demographic groups. So making sure that we are providing safe and comfortable opportunities for those folks to walk and bike to their destinations. Similarly, zero-car households who rely on walking and biking. Keep going. Next slide. And then beyond demographics, we wanted to map transportation conditions, and starting with existing and planned trail network, right? So as I said, there are a lot of trails that are already in the study area. There are a lot of wide shared use paths in the city of Palm Bay along major. So trying to understand where are the facilities that are currently existing and planned. Like you can see, the dashed lines here are the planned facility master plans or ongoing projects. So we want to kind of start off with understanding what's already happened or has been planned. Next slide. Same thing with the bike ped master plan recommendations. As I said, a few years back, we had done a county-wide master plan, which identifies certain corridors for priority pedestrian and bicycle treatments. These were mainly the kind of the functional classified roadways, so major roadways, which would have enhanced ped bike facilities. Go to the next slide. And then projects that are already identified in the 2045 long-range transportation plan done by TPO. There's a list of project priorities, which are like prioritized projects, and then the bike ped master plan. So these are all the projects that are already been planned that we want to incorporate in our overall network that are not existing today, but are already identified in other plans. And then transit, because it's kind of counterintuitive, but when we think about transit riders, a lot of them walk or bike to the bus stops. So we have a bus network in the study area, which is mainly focusing on City of Palm Bay along major roads. And the bubbles on the map show the ridership. So especially at high ridership stops, we want to make sure that there is good ped bike network that people can use stops. Next slide. And then finally, safety. Again, as part of the Vision Zero planning, TPO a lot of crash data. So we kind of utilize those data sets to understand what's the pattern in pedestrian bicycle crashes, not just like severe injury, but also like there have been a lot of fatal crashes. Again, it's kind of concentrated on those major corridors, major intersections that people have across multi-lane roadways. And we want to, again, emphasize that as part of a trail network, bike ped network, we can improve safety, especially at these major crossings. So all of this existing conditions data was used into kind of a synthesis analysis, which we are calling active transportation propensity index. And what it is it's a kind of an index of land use, demographic, and transportation data sets that indicate which areas have high or low propensity for active transportation. And by active transportation, we really mean kind of walking, biking, horseback riding, imagine kind of using your body to kind of propel yourself, right, in some ways. So that's kind of what we're thinking. And we want to understand which of these areas have higher concentration of people or destinations or facilities that would encourage more people to. So this is a kind of a stew, like an index of all these existing maps that I showed. If you go to the next slide, it kind of creates this kind of a map. So the process is really kind of divided the study area into a honeycomb of hexagons. Hexagons really kind of reflect this tiled network that helps us understand the patterns. And using GIS analysis, we kind of created a point system to understand, which areas have higher concentration of people or jobs or destinations, higher concentration of, crash history or transit ridership, all those different data sets that help us understand where people want to walk or bike because of population or other demographic conditions. And this is kind of a map that was created that shows a lot of concentration, again, in City of Palm Bay along Port Malabar Boulevard, and a little bit of patches in kind of the western side of the study area as well, along St. John Heritage Parkway. And then further south in Miko area, there's a lot of population concentration there along Route 1, US 1. So that's, again, a cluster where people may need ped bike facilities for their everyday use as well as recreational use. Go to the next one. So then we kind of overlaid this transportation index with the existing trail network. And what's fascinating is that we can see that there are a lot of trails that exist today, and then there are a lot of shared use paths in City of Palm Bay, but they're connected from each other. So the big goal is, through this project, can we create a connected network where people, where they're located, can access those regional trails, are able to kind of go to their everyday destinations through a connected network. Next slide. All right, so the next question we have on MentiMeter is, how would you like to use trails? And you can choose up to 3. Again, the options are recreation or leisure, to exercise, commute to or from work or school, shopping, entertainment, or any other uses. So you can choose up to 3. I know like people walk and bike for different reasons. You know, if there's a quick errand that you can run, people may walk or bike, but they may also like to do recreational, longer running or jogging, biking trips on weekends. So you can choose up to 3. We're seeing a lot of folks kind of choosing recreation or exercise. Of course, there's a lot of overlap between those two as well. Some folks are walking and biking along trails to do shopping and entertainment. Which is really kind of the transportation mode, right? And it's interesting that we have a lot of destinations, create a connected network, maybe more people can use walking and biking as options, safe and comfortable options to do their everyday errands. All right, but not surprisingly, you know, a lot of folks are using trails for recreation and exercise. All right. Maybe we move on to, oh, we're seeing some more responses. Great. So next, I want to kind of pivot to kind of from existing conditions and synthesis to thinking about the trail system, right? So when we think about a trail system, there are 2 buckets that we generally think about it. One is kind of a trail hierarchy and different trail typologies or trail types. Hierarchy is basically, think of a roadway network where you have interstate or highways, major arterial roadways, collector, and then your local neighborhood streets. So we're thinking of trail systems somewhat similar, right? So there are primary trails, which can connect regionally, secondary and tertiary trails, which are kind of more local trails. And then beyond that, there are various typologies. There are like different types of trails, maybe off-road, along road, natural surface. We want to kind of think about the system in these 2 buckets. So the next few slides kind of have a little bit more information on these. So I'll kind of walk you through those. If you go to the next one. So primary trails, as I said, these are kind of regional connections. The map on the right is kind of a diagrammatic illustration of Brevard County. And think about the showcase trail network, the regional trails that take you from one end of the county to the other or beyond. Those are kind of the primary trails. They're generally kind of named trails, you know, kind of coast to coast or alternate trail. They're wider, paved generally. And you know, there might be some areas where there's a gap in the trail network where we need on-street facilities. But for the most part, these are kind of off-road or along-road shared use paths, and they connect kind of destinations at the regional scale. Go to the next one. Then we have secondary trails, which are kind of your sub-area connection that take you maybe from primary trails to other primary trails. These may be along major roads, could be off-road as well. Again, there could be some on-street facilities like bike lanes and sidewalks where we need to bridge some gaps. More local trails. These are not to different parts of the county or the state. Go to the next one. And then we have the tertiary trails, which are really kind of local neighborhood level trails. Maybe they're like from your neighborhood to a park. Could be like loops within a regional park. These are generally narrower, 6 to 12 feet wide. Could be paved shared use trails off or along road. Sometimes could be on-street facilities as well to connect some gaps. And then we are thinking of the unpaved trails to the conservation areas and the blueways as part of this kind of tertiary trails, because they, again, are kind of local in scale. Go to the next one. And then beyond the hierarchy, what's important to think through is different trail types. So if we go to the next, you know, the most common type of trail we think of is this shared use trail off-road. We're calling this shared use because we expect people on bikes and people walking, running, jogging, or on roller skaters to share. It's not meant to be shared with cars or vehicles. It's really meant to be shared between pedestrians and bicyclists. And generally, you know, there are paved trails. You know, this rendering kind of shows a potential trail on a canal, similar to one that we have in the study area, like the Boundary Canal Trail. These are 8 to 15 feet in width. Guidelines that we are developing as part of this master plan on kind of the recommended widths or minimum widths. These are generally paved with asphalt or concrete. There could be some interesting materials that can be used with permeable environmental impacts. And then there are a lot of wetlands in the study area where we may need boardwalks, wooden bridges to span these environmental sensitive areas. The trip purpose is kind of active recreation plus transportation. And again, these are generally along canals, utility corridors, rail corridors, conservation areas. All right, keep going to the next one. So similar to off-road, there's a version that could be along road, right? So we're calling these shared use paths along roads. These are kind of generally look and feel like wide sidewalks, 8 to 15 foot wide sidewalks that could be comfortably shared between bidirectional pedestrian and bicycle traffic. Generally, they're asphalt or concrete. Again, could be used with permeable materials, and also may need boardwalks or some bridges to span areas like canals or different environmentally sensitive areas. Generally, they're located along major roads where we have higher speed roads, higher traffic volume roads where you need to separate pedestrians and bicyclists. Connections between those off-road trails as well. Go to the next one. So these two are kind of more urban. Even the on-street facility type. This is, we generally don't think of bike lanes or sidewalks as trails, but they could be useful types of facilities to bridge some gaps in the trail network. So imagine there is a regional trail, but there is like a neighborhood that we need to span to connect the trails, and there isn't a real kind of option to connect a trail in an off-road or a long roadway. So we could use bike lanes, or if it's a rural or residential street with less traffic volume, less traffic speeds, with some traffic calming, maybe the bicyclists can share the street. There are a lot of these kind of rural roads in our study area in Malabar and Grand Bulgaria, where a lot of the roads are not even paved, right? They're kind of compacted dirt or aggregate, which could potentially be shared with bicyclists. And then, of course, like sidewalks can help connect the pedestrian network. Go to the next one. And then we kind of pivot from more of the paved facilities that may be more urban in context and could be used for transportation to unpaved trail network. Generally, we think of natural surface or unpaved trails as recreational facilities. A lot of these trails are present in the conservation areas as part of the EU properties. The widths are typically narrower. They could range from 3 to 15 feet, depending on generally, they're kind of compacted natural earth or dirt. Sometimes it's stabilized crushed stone aggregates. In other areas, they've been used with wood chips. So there's kind of a more natural surface area. They're generally located in conservation and forested areas, but could be along canals, rivers, creeks. This is a type of trail that has less environmental impacts because there's less kind of impervious area. So it could be used in sensitive areas environmentally. And generally, they're used for recreation by hikers or mountain bicyclists. Go to the next one. Similar to kind of unpaved, we call this out as unpaved equestrian trail used by horseback riders. Again, very similar details, but there is a lot of use by horseback riders in the study area, so we wanted to call this out. Go to the next one. And then finally, as I said, designated paddling trails or scenic blueways, kind of, creeks, canals even that are navigable by small boats, kayaks, canoes, paddle boards. There are a couple of examples in the study area. And again, these could be part of the overall trail network. Primary purpose is recreation, but again, this is part of the kind of the mix of trails that kind of create a comprehensive network. Go to the next one. All right, so the next interactive question is, what type of trail do you prefer? So same process, same QR code, same kind of 8-digit code. See responses coming in. So a lot of people right now are kind of preferring shared use trail that's off-road, unpaved natural surface trails, designated paddling trail, blueways. Seeing some responses. Again, kind of thinking through this, the first three or the kind of the three on the left, shared use trails and on-street facilities, are really helpful to both transportation, active transportation to access destination, as well as recreation. The two on the right are primarily recreational in nature, but also helps, right? Like from public health standpoint, mental health standpoint, having access to those recreational opportunities is key. So again, it's kind of a comprehensive network of trails. But from transportation standpoint, it's really the shared use trails and on-street facilities that help create that network. All right, this is interesting. A lot of folks like the shared use trails, off-road, along road, and then natural surface trails. Haven't seen any responses for on-street facility. Again, the way we kind of our work is to think about these as like critical facilities to bridge the gaps, right? Any trail network will have some gaps where you are not able to continue a trail, and these facilities help create a connected network. All right, if we go, maybe we go to the next one. All right, so we talked about existing conditions. We talked through the system of how we are thinking about trail network, and now we want to talk through the draft recommended trails network. So this is really where all things come together. So this map, I know it's a little hard to read, and we have some zoom ins on next slides, but this map is showing trail system with different colors indicating different types. So these are all the different types that I went through. You know, the greens are shared use trails, off-road. The purples are kind of a long road. Then we have on-street, designated blue ways in blue, and then brown for unpaved natural surface trails. The solid lines indicate that it's an existing trail or facility. The dashed lines indicate that it's previously planned in some previous master plans or ongoing projects. And then the dashed dot line type is new alignment, new trails that we are recommending as part of this plan. So we're calling them as potential trails. And once this plan gets adopted, they would become part of the plan network. So maybe we go to the next slide. So this is kind of a zoom in of the northern area. You can see a lot of existing shared use paths along major roads in Palm Bay. There's some trails in kind of the Malabar Palm Bay area with the Boundary Canal Trail, all-tunnel paved trail, and then a lot of these brown existing lines, which are existing unpaved or natural surface trails. But I'd like to highlight a couple of longer corridors that we are recommending as part of this plan. One is C1 Canal, just north of Americana Boulevard, that connects kind of the whole study area east-west, right? So it will connect the Boundary Canal Trail on the eastern side all the way to St. John Heritage Parkway and the St. John Heritage Eco Heritage Trail. So it will be kind of the connection that creates the east-west connectivity in the study area. There are some other canals like Canal C10, 37 that create north-south connectivity. And these are the canals that are wider. So there's kind of an upper embankment which can be used for trails. We have coordinated with Melbourne Tillman staff to kind of understand which trails are potential alignments, which trails are narrower, which canals are narrower that cannot have trails. So there's been some understanding of which trails may make sense, but even then, these are, you know, it's a long process to get these trails implemented because there'll be a lot of coordination that would need to happen, a lot of kind of design details that would need to be figured out. But at least at this stage, we think these are the feasible alignments. The kind of the diagonal trail you see is the Cross City Trail through Palm Bay. That's a transmission easement. The right-of-way is owned by the city. Some of those segments already exist just south of Malabar Road, and it would create kind of an interesting diagonal trail through the study area. Go to the next one. And then on the southern part, you know, especially through Malabar and Grand Park area, there are a lot of environmental constraints. There are not a lot of opportunities to create kind of that north-south connections. But we do think like there are opportunities to extend kind of Quarry Road alignment to Grant Road, and then from Walcaria Road all the way to Miko Road, kind of using some of the previously planned alignments as part of the Showcase Trail Network. Road and Grant Road, there is this missile annex, which is kind of an embankment that was used for other purposes, but now it's kind of high and dry through the area that we can use for trail, and then using some of the existing kind of city-owned right-of-ways to extend the trails further down. And then to the southern part, we have the Sebastian River Preserve State Park. There are a lot of unpaved trail network that exists as part of the park, but we are proposing a potential east-west connection right at the boundary of Indian River County and Brevard County to create an east-west connection. All right, go to the next one. So the next question is really in 1 to 3 words, describe your future vision for the trail network in Southern Brevard, right? So this is kind of a vision board almost, like we want to create a kind of a word cloud. Describe, like, when you think of a trail network in Southern Brevard, what are the words that come to mind that would describe an ideal network? What's the vision? And while we get responses, I'll just add that we have a few more slides at the end, and then there is an online map where people can zoom in, pan around to understand the recommended network. I know these slides might be a little difficult to fully understand the recommended network. So we do have some other tools for you on time in more detail to give us feedback. All right, I'm not seeing any responses, so I don't know. There we go. Expansive, safe, multi-use. All right. Promotion, maintained. Connectivity, safe, staying off roads. But education, these are great words. Like, I mean, you know, again, it's kind of interesting to see the connection between these responses and our overall goals. There's a great alignment between the two. It's great to see. Convenient to access, safe from cars. Available to North Brevard, I guess that's the end. So again, kind of creating a regional connections, regional network that can access trails that are further up in Titusville area as well. And the Showcase Trail Network is really kind of the vision for that. If you're not aware of the Showcase Trail Network, it's a county-wide network that is identified in previous plans. I think the website for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan has more information on it. Trails that are part of the Showcase Trail Networks, we have incorporated those as part of this plan as well. All right, connectivity, convenient, relaxing, connected trails. Awesome. So these are great words. It will help us kind of rethink and you know, the messaging and the goals. Really helps us understand, you know, to get public feedback and how they align with public feedback. Awesome. Maybe we go to the next one. All right. So now we have kind of a draft network, and we'll revise it based on the feedback we get. But as you can see, it's a long-term vision. There are a lot of lines on the map, and it's going to be difficult to kind of go and build all of this at once, right? So the prioritization becomes key, which trail corridors we want to prioritize. And we've come up with this kind of 5-step process that we're going to use as part of this master plan to prioritize the trail network. So step 1 is data-driven analysis, which is really using the active transportation propensity index scores. Like, we've done a lot of existing conditions analysis. We have used that to create that index. So we're going to use that to see which of these trail corridors have high scores that already, you know, kind of incorporate a lot of the existing conditions data. Step 2 is creating a network level feasibility screening. And what that means is really not to say whether a trail is feasible, yes or no. It's not a binary, but it's kind of a range of ease or difficulty of implementing, right? So what we're trying to do is create like a mapping analysis to understand which of the trails that we are proposing go through different environmental conditions like floodplains, wildlife habitats for endangered species, or private properties, wetlands, and more length of any particular proposed trail that goes through any of these different areas will make it more difficult to implement, right? So that's kind of the idea, is to understand which of these trails are easier to build and which of these trails are going to be more difficult because there's more coordination, there's more environmental impacts. So after that screening, we are now kind of in step 3 to get public input. So there are certain questions that we have as part of this presentation that will help us get input on which of the trails that you all think should be prioritized, you know, whether it's kind of connecting to existing trails, or should we connect to existing employment centers and other everyday destinations? Should we prioritize areas with high population density? So there are questions like these that will help us understand which trails that meet those kind of points. We can prioritize those. And then step 4 is getting working group feedback. So once we have public input, we'll go back to the work, try to get input from agency staff who kind of own those right-of-ways or easements. And then finally, we'll create a prioritized list of trail corridors. This is almost going to be like a ranking. And the goal is that some of the top ranked corridors in this prioritized list would advance to a future phase of feasibility studies to move towards kind of the next steps in that inverted pyramid at the start. All right. So here's a question that kind of is geared towards helping us understand how we prioritize these trails. So I can kind of walk you through this. It's basically statements that you want to choose the top 3 that you agree with most. So basically, it's like I want to prioritize trails that are option 1 are located off-road, along canals or utility corridors, natural areas, not along roads, even if they take longer time to implement, right? As I said, there's a lot of different agencies involved. Maybe there's additional time that is needed for agreements on construction maintenance, so that may add timeline. So ideally, people prefer those trails, but it might take longer. Option 2 is quicker implementation that can be part of roadway projects, right? There are a lot of roadway projects happening through different agencies, including FDOT, that may include shared use paths. Third is to connect to other trails and conservation areas. Fourth is to connect to everyday destinations like libraries, schools, transit stops. And lastly, whether we should connect to transportation disadvantaged areas or should we connect to areas that have zero-car households, etc., to prioritize those areas where people may rely on more walking and biking. All right, so we're getting some results. 70% are saying that, you know, off-road, even if it takes longer time. Next is connect to other trails and conservation areas. All right. Maybe we go to the next one. We're still getting some responses. All right, I want to leave some time for a Q&A. So next steps, I'll quickly kind of walk through the next steps and we'll open up for Q&A. Go to the next one. All right, so how can you get involved? So multiple ways to get involved. You can visit the website and there's a project page to get more information. You can provide comments in the chat box of this meeting and we'll get to questions and comments at the end of the presentation. There's a QR code to a feedback form that you can fill out and provide us feedback. A similar form you'll see for GoToWebinar survey, same questions, so there's another option. And then if you go to the next one, the other way that we would love for you to review the online map and provide feedback is through this online tool that we have created. And we'll share the PDFs. I think it's also in the handouts. So if you go to this slide, you can click on that link. I don't know, Roxanne, if you have it up, but I can quickly walk through, show you all folks how to use this. It's a online map that you can zoom in and out. You can pan around, turn on and off different layers. There are already some existing layers that you can see. So if you see on the top right, there is this kind of a layers icon. Roxanne, if you want to kind of pull that up. So there are these different layers that you can turn on and off. There are existing trailheads, potential trailheads, existing and planned facilities. The colors represent different types. So you can, to create a comment, you go onto that left panel, click on the comment icon, zoom in to where you want to put a comment, click on it, and then this dialog box will open up and you can type in your comment and hit save. And that way the comment will be recorded. You can see what other people have commented. So it's kind of a crowdsourcing type tool to get comments from all the folks. So you can comment about anything, you know, whether you like a particular alignment, you don't like it, if you want to see some other alignments, or if you see like, okay, this location is like a safety concern, we want to prioritize kind of safe crossings there. So it's kind of an open-ended comment map, and we're showing data sets related to existing, planned, and potential trails, as well as trailheads. All right. So going back to the slide deck, the next slide. All right, so the next steps, we are going to keep the comment period open till midnight on Friday, March 21st. So I think that's like 2 or 3 weeks from now. So please send us comments within that time frame for us to kind of incorporate that in our next steps to wrap up the project. We do have a third working group meeting in April to kind of think through and debrief the public feedback and revise. Then we'll finalize the report in summer or fall 2025. Final presentations to various councils and committees in fall, and the expected TPO adoption is kind of fall, winter 2020. And the last slide, I think, is just the contact details for Sarah and me, and you can email either one of us with any additional comments or questions that you have.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, we can open up for questions.
Thanks so much, Aditya. So we did have 2 questions that came in already. One of them was just a housekeeping question in regards to MentiMeter, and then the other one was asking if the maps would be posted online. And we have posted both the interactive maps as well as also the boards that were used at the in-person public meeting. You can download the presentation from GoTo, but that presentation will also be posted on the website. And we'll just give a few minutes just to see if any other questions come in. Also, this recording will be made available on the website and our YouTube as well. There's a question regarding, will some of the trails be pet friendly? We will leave that up to the maintaining agencies. Each maintaining agencies such as cities or the EEL program have their own policies regarding trails, and we do not have regulatory authority over that.
Yeah, and maybe we can, while we wait for other questions, we can expand on that. Like, the idea, so TPO is a planning organization. It's not an implementing agency. So we're doing this master plan. And the goal is that once we have the prioritized trail networks, there could be multiple avenues to advance some of these trails. Some of them can happen through FDOT roadway projects if it's a shared use path. Some of them could happen through city projects, right? So there are different avenues. And because of the patchwork of different agencies and right-of-way ownership easements, as Sarah said, there might be different kind of regulations and maintenance procedures based on who owns that particular right-of-way where the trail is located.
Thank you, Aditya. We did have another question come in. This may have already been answered. Is Miko Scrub Sanctuary mentioned in the plan? We do include the unpaved trails that are already within the Miko Scrub Sanctuary in the plan. Another question came in, are the bike lanes along US 1 included as trails in this project? In my opinion, the bike lanes need improvement to be safe for cyclists. Yes, a bike lane is not considered a trail. Aditya, off the top of my head, I can't recall if we mapped US 1 as a potential trail alignment. Okay, I got it pulled up.
We have,
we do.
But not the existing one, right? So to the question, it's currently, I don't think it'll qualify as a trail because I think it's a bike lane.
Correct.
And that road, I think it needs to be kind of separated from the vehicular traffic to allow it for like people of all ages and abilities to use safely and comfortably. So that's where we're not considering as a trail network. I mean, it's a facility that can be used today by folks, and some people may feel comfortable using it, but we're still identifying that alignment as a potential trail to create a trail along it, basically, or shared use path.
We'll just give a couple more minutes to see if any other questions come in. And of course, you can always email us after, and we encourage you to engage with us on the map that is both in your chat as well as also will be shared in a follow-up email and is accessible from our website as well. I'd also like to encourage you guys to provide us feedback. So when you close out, when the meeting closes, a survey will pop up and you can complete that there. Or you can go to the Google Forms that Aditya shared the QR code on, and that will also be included in a follow-up email. You'll get an automatic follow-up email from GoToWebinar within an hour. And then later this week, we'll also send you a more robust follow-up email.
I just wanted to quickly go back on the earlier question of the scrub, the conservation areas. I mean, so there are a lot of existing unpaved trails in these conservation areas that we have included in the network, but we've also thought through like how can we connect the trailheads to these conservation areas as part of the trail network so people can walk or bike to those conservation areas as well. So Miko Road, come to mind, where we're thinking of expanding the existing shared use path to create a east-west connection from the neighborhoods to these.
I've had another comment say I like the idea of a trail alongside US 1, and then also thank you for including the public and working to get feedback. We'll just give one more minute for any last minute questions. Once again, I encourage you to complete the feedback form and of course engage with us and engage with the map as well. All right, and at 12:58, as I'm seeing no other questions come in, I would just like to do one last thank you for attending and thank you for engaging with us. The Space Coast TPO likes to engage with our public often and as early in the planning process as possible. And we appreciate that you took the time out of your day in order to engage with this project. So with that, I'd like to thank you for attending and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.